That's what he said, just like that, thinking I was asleep. He said it from the next room, his voice low but clear, like someone unburdening themselves with anger and no remorse. And I just stayed silent. I didn't say anything, not even a sigh. I just squeezed my eyes shut. It hurt more than any illness, more than any blow life had given me before, because that disgust came from my own son. My name is Don Eliseo. I'm 78 years old, and this story you're about to hear isn't pretty, but it's true. I was born in a rural area of Michigan. I worked from childhood with my hands in the earth and became a man pushing cement wheelbarrows when I was barely 14. After much effort, I managed to set up a small construction materials company that over the years became something decent, nothing luxurious, but it allowed me to raise my 2 children, pay for their private school, give them a house, food, and even take them on vacations to places I never dreamed of visiting as a child. I was both father and mother because their mom left early, leaving me with a 5-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. I never complained, never, because they were my engine, my faith. And now, almost 40 years later, hearing him say that. My dad disgusts me. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay staring at the ceiling like a ghost, my heart shrinking, my mind repeating those words like an evil echo. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh at having been so foolish, so blind, because now everything made sense. The impatient looks, the sighs when I spoke, the sarcastic comments at family dinners. I just didn't want to see it. I clung to the image of that little boy who hugged me with his short arms, hands full of mud, who would say, "Daddy, don't go," every time I left for work. But that child no longer existed. What remained now was a cold, ungrateful, and cruel man. The next day I got up as always, prepared coffee, put bread on the table, and waited for him to come out of his room. When I saw him, he greeted me with that same face as always, as if nothing had happened. "How did you sleep, Dad?" "Fine, son." "Very well." And I offered him coffee without a trace of resentment in my voice, because I already knew what I had to do. Throughout that day, his words wouldn't leave my head. I looked at myself in the mirror and wondered, is that what I am? A burden, a nuisance, an old man who causes disgust? I remembered all the times I stopped buying clothes for myself to pay for his courses, all the times I slept on the couch when he came with his wife so they could have privacy. I remembered the day I signed the title transfer of a car to his name without asking for anything in return. And the time I got him out of debt with the IRS by selling part of my land. All of that was in my heart like deep footprints. And yet, now I disgust him. On the 3rd day, while he worked from the dining room with his laptop, I passed nearby and heard how he spoke on the phone with someone else. My dad is still here. Yes, the same as always. Old, slow. I don't know, I don't want to live with him anymore. It's like having an old piece of furniture in the house, but one that breathes. And he let out a laugh, a low, mocking laugh. I went to the garden and sat alone. I looked at the house, that big, beautiful house that I built with so much effort. That house was in my name, all of it, valued at more than $1.5 million. Yes, all mine. And then a deep silence invaded me, not of sadness, no. It was a silence of certainty, as if a voice inside me said, "Eliseo, it's time." That night I opened a drawer in the closet, took a blue pen and an old paper that had been folded there for years, and began to write something I would never forget. But I'll tell you about that later. Let me ask you something, if you had heard that from your own son, what would you have done? And tell me also, from what corner of the world are you listening to me? Because this story is just beginning. I didn't write a long letter, no. I didn't even use fancy words, just wrote what was necessary, a few clear, direct lines, like everything in my life. I left it well folded, tucked inside a yellow envelope I'd kept for years, along with other important papers. Before that, I walked through every corner of the house, not to cry, not to remember, but to look with different eyes, with the eyes of someone who no longer belonged. Then I went to the bank. I had an appointment with my financial advisor, a very proper young man I'd spoken with before. He knew I didn't have many expenses, that I lived off my pension and some rental income, but what no one knew was that I had a fund saved up, a dollar account I'd started forming many years ago, just in case. That day I withdrew the amount I needed to do what I had to do, without moving much, without raising suspicions. In the afternoon I went to talk to the same real estate agency that helped me buy the house 30 years ago. I was attended by an older gentleman who still remembered me. "Don Eliseo, what a pleasure to see you. What brings you here?" "I want to sell my house as soon as possible." He looked at me with surprise. Asked if I was sure. I told him yes, that I wanted discretion. The property was in my name, no debts, no mortgages, no legal complications, everything clean. "Any special reason?" he asked. "Just one. I want to disappear." He asked no more questions, just nodded his head. While the paperwork began to move, I continued my life as if nothing. Santiago thought I was still the same. I cooked, watered the plants, answered him kindly, but I was no longer the same. There was an invisible distance between us, a distance he didn't see, but I felt like a wall. One night, he brought some friends to dinner at home. They laughed, drank beer, played music. I didn't say anything. I locked myself in my room, but I could hear his voice again. "My dad doesn't notice anything. He's old already. He's in his own world." And another replied, "But he lives like a king, eh? That house is a palace." And he burst into laughter. "Of course, while he's alive. Let him enjoy it. After that, it's mine." It was there, at that moment, that I knew my decision was correct. Days passed and the sale advanced quickly. The buyer was a foreigner, wanted to pay cash, was in a hurry just like me. Everything aligned as if life itself said, "Enough, Eliseo. Get out of there." The night before signing I slept little, not from doubts, but from excitement. It wasn't revenge I felt, it was relief. The next morning I signed the papers. I sold the house for $1.5 million. They deposited the money in a new account at another bank with another name as legal beneficiary, mine, but with reinforced privacy code. No one could trace anything. I had everything planned, everything clean. I returned home, which from that moment was no longer mine. Santiago hadn't returned from work yet, I had time. So I went upstairs, packed my suitcase, the usual one, the green canvas one, put in enough clothes, my documents, my father's watch, a couple of old photos, and of course, the envelope with the note. I left it on the dining room table with a stone on top so it wouldn't fly away, and left. I didn't take a taxi, I walked to the corner, took a bus downtown. From there straight to the airport. I already had the ticket bought 3 days ago. A one-way ticket, no return, no notices, no goodbyes. And while the plane took off, I felt peace. A strange, silent peace, the kind you only know after much pain. Santiago arrived that night and called me. Once, twice, 3 times, I didn't answer. He left me a message. "Dad, where are you? Why aren't you home?" Minutes later, another message. "What does this mean? Did you sell the house? Are you crazy?" And finally, one more, shorter, harsher. "What did you do, old man?" I didn't respond to any of them, and all he found was the note I left on the table. The same one I wrote with firm handwriting and no trembling. "The one who disgusts you left and took everything. Now you no longer have to be ashamed. Learn to live without him. Goodbye, son. Because there comes a moment when silence is not cowardice, it's justice." The plane landed in Monterey at 9 p.m. Nobody knew I was there, nobody was waiting for me, but for the first time in a long time I didn't care. I had reserved a simple room in a modest pension downtown, nothing luxurious, but enough to spend a few weeks while I decided my next step. I registered under a compound name, using both my surnames, and paid in advance in cash. That same night, while I was lying in the hard bed of the pension, I checked my old cell phone and saw more than 20 missed calls, all from him. More messages, more audios, some pleading, others furious, one even insulting me. How could you think of doing such a stupidity? What am I going to do now? Where are you, you old idiot? I turned off the phone, wrapped it in a cloth, and left it inside the suitcase. The first days in the new city were strange. I would wake up early as always and go out to walk the streets aimlessly. I observed people passing by, street vendors, children leaving school, and I thought, how many of them were also abandoned by their children? How many old people like me walk around alone with broken hearts, pretending it doesn't hurt? I bought coffee at a little stand on the corner, sat in the plaza, and watched life continue as if nothing had happened. One afternoon I met an older man, Don Roque, who also lived at the pension. He asked me if I had family and I answered that I once had some. He looked at me in silence and then said, "There are things that are lost and are no longer worth looking for." He was right. One day, while walking through the market, my old cell phone started ringing. It was a formal message written by a lawyer. My son Santiago was notifying me of an intention to challenge the sale, alleging that I was not in full use of my mental faculties when I sold the house. I had to read it 3 times to believe it. He wanted to claim I was senile, that I was going crazy, that I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't get angry, I didn't despair, I just breathed deeply and smiled because I had already foreseen all of that. Before the sale I had asked my doctor for a complete certificate, signed and sealed, stating that I enjoyed total lucidity, both physical and mental. So I called the lawyer and told him calmly, "Tell Santiago to forget it. He's not going to get a single penny from that house." However, life has its own turns. The call came on a Tuesday morning from my daughter Monica. "Dad?" Her voice. I recognized it instantly. "Dad, are you there?" "Yes, daughter, here I am." She had been looking for me. Santiago hadn't told her where I was, only that I had sold the house and disappeared. I told her my version without embellishments, without exaggerations. I spoke to her about the disgusts me, about the plan, about the sale, about the note. She cried, not from surprise, but from sorrow. "I always knew something wasn't right," she confessed. "Santiago changed a lot. He became arrogant, cold. He used you, Dad, and I saw it." A week later she came to my new house. I saw her get out of the taxi with eyes full of tears. We hugged for a long time, cried without saying anything. That hug said everything we hadn't said to each other for years. She brought my grandson Emiliano, an 8-year-old boy who with one look gave me back something I thought was lost, sincere tenderness. "You're my Grandpa Eliseo," he said, approaching me timidly with a ball in his hand. "Yes, my son, I am. And why didn't you live with us? Mom said you were traveling." I looked at him carefully. I chose my words. "Sometimes adults also need to find their place, son. Is this your place now?" "I think so. Do you like it?" He nodded and without further ado hugged me tight. That hug was the medicine my soul needed. Months later, Santiago showed up at my house one last time. Defeated, with sunken eyes, no strength left to invent another lie. "Dad, I have nowhere to sleep tonight." I looked at him. "You know why I can't let you in, Santiago? Because you're not asking for forgiveness, you're asking for help. And they're not the same thing. What's the difference? Forgiveness comes from the soul, help comes from interest. And you have no soul in this visit." I closed the door slowly, without violence. That was the last time I saw him. Today I look back and don't regret it, because every decision I made was with conscience. I didn't lose my son. I lost the illusion that he was someone he never was. Sometimes, to heal, One has to break the mirror and stop looking for the reflection that never existed. So if you're listening to this story and you feel you're on the verge of giving up, if you think there's no way out, if you think nobody values you, I tell you this from the bottom of my soul, it's not too late. It's never too late to choose yourself, to lift your head, to say, no more. Because sometimes the ending isn't a fall, it's a rebirth. Now tell me, what would you have done in my place? And tell me also from what corner of the world you're listening to this story, because maybe I'm not the only father who chose to live with dignity, even if alone. And if you made it this far, I thank you for listening to me, because every word I told was with my heart in my hand.